Good afternoon and welcome to this public meeting of the Island Council of this, the 21st day of April, 2026. I would please ask everyone to stand for the Sabin anthem. The camera, Lisa, can come up. Hello. It's not at the moment. Wait. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. For those watching live or who may watch this later, you may have noticed we're using a new video system. We also today launched a new website for the Island Council. So all the underlying pieces for this meeting, including the videos, will be available. The underlying documents will be available before the meeting and also after the meeting that you can peruse them. So when we get to some further points in the agenda, I will, on the website, for those at home or wherever, you can see the underlying documents which we are referring to. As I said, today is the first time we're doing this. We just completed a central committee meeting whereby a presentation was made. So also in the future, if there's other things in the Island Council presentations or such which need to be made, those can also be streamed live, and also for those here present or those at home. So we're happy to be able to use this system. So there will be some hurdles we have to go through, so please bear with us. For the Sabin anthem, the video didn't totally go up, but nonetheless, we'll get those kinks out of the cables within due time. So as we continue, I have one announcement. Island Council member, Mr. Julio Every, is absent with notice. That concludes agenda point number 1. I move on to agenda point number 2, approval of the agenda. There is one small change. We will no longer have agenda point number 6. And number 6 will be dealt with in the future. That is the Island Council proposal 2026, number 1, the Saba language policy. So therefore, we would have 7 agenda points instead of 8. Can we all agree to that? Yes. So the agenda is approved. We have 7 agenda points. We now move on to agenda point number 3, approval of the minutes. There were no minutes, so that we will move on. And agenda point number 4, oral question time in accordance with Article 36. Those are the questions which have been posed by the various Island Council members, and we will begin with Island Council member Mr. Rolando Wilson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Seeing that protocol have already been extended, I would like to start with my questions. Mr. Chairman, through you to the Executive Council, as we all know, in the near future, the public entity will be getting a new governor. That person will be Commander-in-Chief for the next 6 years, if God permits. I would like to know where this person will be living. Has the public entity make any arrangement yet? Or does that person, when he or she reach on the island, have to do that themselves? We all had agreed upon to extend the current Island Council seats from 5 to 7 and the commissioner seats from 2 to 3. Because already I have to my right-hand side, a young council member there on my back constantly, telling me which position he wants to be already for the next election. Yeah, I'm constantly, I'm the chairman of the party, so I gotta keep everybody in order. Yeah. Are preparations being made for this, Mr. Chairman? I am here speaking specifically about room space for the new Island Council members and the third commissioner. How many buildings does the public entity have out on rent for their staff members? I can also get it in writing. Mr. Chairman, the war and the rising prices of food, oil, gasoline, and diesel all over the world, particularly in the Caribbean, are going up. What measures have been put in place to help those in dire need here on Saba? Last year, we approved, Mr. Chairman, I can't remember the amount, if it was 1 million or 2 million, to build 3 apartment complex right up here in the range. I would like to know from the commissioner, has these funds been allocated already? Is it on our account here on Saba? When will the breaking ground start for these apartment buildings? What will be the criteria in the bidding process? Will local contractors be able to build on these? Because right now, what we're seeing it there, one contractor is getting all the work here. And we have a lot of those small contractors out there who have proven themselves over the years, balling. I think everybody got a job done by the new harbor, We're here, and we took an oath to try and help everybody. And during the hurricane, we made sure of that everybody got a piece of the cake. Yeah, one moment, please. Yes. What would be the criteria used to select the new tenants for the new apartment complex in the range? Will Own Your Own Home be doing this and managing the future apartment complex, or government getting back into that business? Because when I started a few years ago here, and with the housing. The office is right downstairs, where our own fraction office is now, and the Dutch told us then at that time, the previous administration with Mr. Granger and Vaughan and Hassel, that we have to get out the housing foundation, out of politics, out of the government buildings, and that's where we purchased really and truly the building there, the old kindergarten, where all of us went from the nuns for that, for the housing foundation, you know? So we have to make things clear. Also there in Stacia, I also too know that Commissioner Mackman signed an agreement when they purchased the homes and the land there by the old terminal building, going to the Lynch plantation. And I think, I'm not sure, you can check it, I think they turned over that also to the housing foundation. They're building homes and things there, so you can ask them how we went about it, you know. The reason why I'm saying that, you know, we have a foundation here on the island. We all know it has its ups and downs, but it's been there standing now for the last close to 40 years, 30 years. And today, tomorrow, God forbid, you can never tell what can happen. If you have to turn into an envy and think, it needs assets. If you want to go on the private, on the market to look for loans and things, it needs assets to back it up. So that's why I'm asking that question. And after the buildings is finished, will it be turned over to own your own home? Own your own home will manage it for the public entity. Afterwards, also, it's like how Own Your Own Home is doing, managing those homes on Needy Hill for Basal Warning, and they're getting a fee, you know. We have to start to protect all of our entities and organizations and foundations that we have here now. You know, I would like to see all of those things, you know. Yeah, yeah, I said it. Also in the range, Mr. Chairman, there's properties on leased land, you know, and own your own home, build homes on it. They're licensed from the government. I would like to, to the government, you know, I would like to see that property, those property turned over to own your own home, and also in the new town. All of the properties that's on St. John's belong to Own Your Own Home Foundation, you know. We know nobody cannot predict the future. You know what can happen. Nobody knows and nobody can predict it. You know, probably someday you might get a crazy commissioner coming here, whatever, to do this and that. You know, so while we're here now, we like to see those things. Like I said from the beginning, it will protect the housing foundation if they need to get any assets, to get a loan or anything, because we're seeing where this is heading for the future. We just had a loan to do some project there. We had a loan for the parking lot on Windward side, and we had to take a loan to build these apartment complex in the range, you know. And like I said, I find government shouldn't be getting in renting and plain real estate. You know, that should be done for a foundation. But then, because if that happens, then you will be competing with the private sector too. I got my share of the blows when we started doing the homes and things in the apartment complex here in the range, the first one. A lot of people who had apartment complex in the private sector, man, they ripped hell with me. But my back was broad, and I told them who they were for. You know, it's in the records. Own Your Own Home Foundation, Mr. Chairman, needs new board members. The Executive Council should take the initiative to advertise for these. You know, we need people who can go there and look and help assist write up proposals and all of that. Mr. Chairman, I am a pensioner now, and I'm available and willing to share my expertise. You know, I'm not going to overdo it, because I have my shopping list already right out. We need to look at the future, and time waits for no man, so let us hit the iron while it is hot. Mr. Chairman, I would like to know what the plans are for Own Your Own Home, for the way forward. The new technical school and multipurpose center building on St. John's. What are going on St. John's? Are they on schedule? Are the plans on schedule? Mr. Chairman, when will the public entity get a building inspector? you know. This is going to happen one of these days. I'm not praying for nobody to come, but I'm telling you, these are going to happen. We can see it. You can read through the lines what things is happening, how we're seeing things going down. What is the status of the Sabre Cares building? I understood that there was some flooding a few days ago when he had a rain in the restaurants area due to the effect on the level of the floor. I don't know if the commissioner still meets every month with the director. You know, now and then I take a little thing and I go inside and I see things and the people explain to you, they explain what has happened. And that's why I'm saying for a building inspector, to try and get a building inspector. Do we have a draft plan or discussion plan already for the new daycare center and Sabre Heritage Foundation building and the public library? Discussion paper drawn. Can we get an update on the harbor project? When will we be able to get a tour again on the site? You know, we see it driving, going and coming from the windward side. You look down and you see it and things there. And there by my home too, on the point, we can go there and you look down, but it would be good again for the Island Council to get a tour and see what's going on there. Mr. Chairman, through you to the Commissioner too, what is the status of the hydroponic farm? You know, when can we get a marketing plan or agriculture plan for the island? I've been calling for that a while. When can we get a tour on that facility once again, Commissioner? It's long overdue now. Mr. Chairman, we have a problem on the island, I must say, a big problem. We have spoken that over and over, but yeah. When will something be done about the extra noise pollution that we are facing during the day and especially in night times? You know, I visit my father often. I'm there on the porch, and at times I see these Brahmas 20, 15 coming, and when they hit the approach by where the Flons home and old garage was, and next to the Lindsay's, they're bucking up and they're coming down, and then they're standing up on top of the seat of the Brahma. I said, my Lord, some of them don't respect their lives, you know what I mean? But yeah. Loud. Mr. Chairman, to you, to the Commissioner of Youth, I think it's time that we hold a youth summit in the month of July. You know, when I was there as commissioner then, we held it. It was successful. We have to find out things about our students, what's their plans, their future plans, will they return, will they stay, how is things going with them, and we can keep it right here. I had my own right here. We sort of day, get one or two dynamic speakers, you know, who have returned, some of the children who have returned, who's been successful, who's working here, and maybe ex-principals, ex-teachers to talk to them. And we even have one here, next to me, Council Lady Elsa. You know, it's time. It's time, it's time, it's time. The Chance property, Mr. Chairman, I've talked about it. It's going on 3 years now. I'm on my way out. And what's the status of it? Our government still interested in purchasing it. I would like to see these things before I leave, because God forbid, you don't know what can happen. You know, probably like how my colleague is out shopping, and they have different political parties shopping too and asking me questions also. So I don't know. Sabre Festival, Mr. Chairman, what's going on? It's 50 years this year, and we haven't heard anything. What are the plans? Is there a committee in place, or will government organize it this year again? Who will be the host? Who will be the host this time first? Will it be Stacia first, or Sabre first, or whatever? you know. So we all know our culture. A lot of us go to Statia to enjoy it there, and then they return back down to her house. Mr. Chairman, 50 years. It's a very, 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 very long time. I can recall when it first started here, right there in the grounds, with the deceased, the late Mrs. Carmen Simmons, and all of us was there. And then after years, the Lions took it over. You know, we have to make a start, Mr. Chairman. Plans. We are already in the end of April, you know, and some of the islands around us has already put out their schedule. You know, Anguilla, Statia, different islands, you know, what's happening. Because I myself, if God permits, I will be in a group. So my colleague here thinks it's only him. He's in for a big surprise this time. I don't know if this question came up already. Has government, I know several council members have wrote in about it, has government met with the representative winner pertaining to high price of tickets and things? Man, it's really, really, really a shame, you know, what they're doing to us, you know. And then to, you know, the hurtful part, what gets to me, last year we sat down with, with the Parliament of St. Martin, all of them, in government, our government, they're all the same. I have immunity here, they can't do me nothing, you know, and it's hurting all of our pockets. And then again, they expect for us to sit down there with them again, with the same to discuss what? Double taxation. We pay our fair share at the medical center and everything, rental. Just this month alone, wherever you turn this week, you're gonna see some of us, people Sabians up there in St. Martin there for Carnival. And I'm gonna see my colleague here too jump in at Juve morning, coming and go in the pond. You know, serious. No, we spend our money. It's not a joking matter, you know. Putting one a little joke in between, but it's serious. I feel shameful, and that's why, you know, I can't say never, but I think I will refuse going to sit down with the Parliament of St. Martin. No matter who they are, in government or out government, it's all the same. It's for St. Martin, but they want a share, a business license of the Sabre Bank. Come on, guys, man. Come on. No, man. I don't have much questions here today, Mr. Chairman, just a few. You know, it all depends on the answers I get back from my executive council. Then we go to a second, maybe a third round, and I rest my case, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Island Council Member Mr. Wilson. There's only 2 rounds, anyhow. So we'll begin with the answering of the questions. We'll begin first with Commissioner Bruce Sagers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, council members, colleagues in the Executive Council, people in the Tribune, and those following online. Several of the questions I believe I can address directly. I'll start off first with the housing one for the governor. I'm not sure if I'm the one that necessarily needs to answer it, but I believe that we need to look back into see exactly what was in the text of the vacancy, because I think that something was mentioned into the vacancy about housing possibilities, but that's something that we have to that we would have to verify. I haven't gotten a chance to check it before this meeting. But one thing is for certain, that the former governor's resident would not be available because, yeah, we all know the daycare center is there at that moment, and there's no condition to actually be a residence. So that's something that I believe we still have to look into. And then, of course, if it's not clear text in the actual vacancy, I'm sure that would become part of the labor negotiations. But that's something that I would need to get back to you about. With regards to the housing for the expanded executive and island council, this has been one of the main points that has been brought up continuously about the lack of preparedness from the Ministry of Basic Care when trying to push forward this law, especially with such a fast pace. We all know that there's only 300,000 available for 3 islands to accommodate the expansion of the councils. And, you know, it's not just a change for Saba, but it's also for Statia and Bonaire. So those discussions are ongoing. BZK had an expert, one of their own people, come in to make an assessment of what was needed to accommodate the change. Needless to say that the outcome of that wasn't something that we would like to desire to see happen. Basically, just adding a chair to the table and saying, make it work. Since then, we've submitted a proposal, and those discussions are ongoing. And one of the possibilities that, you know, seems to be maybe getting a bit of traction is looking at the possible Satel building, or the former Satel building, to house the expanded council. But again, those discussions are ongoing with BZK. As for the number of properties that's currently being rented by the government, currently there is four buildings, namely the Saba Roads office, the former IND and tax department building, the top floor of the RCN building, and then, of course, the former governor's residence, and that's from the Rijksvastgoedbedrijf. So 4 buildings here at the bottom. A question was asked about the rising prices of food, oil, gasoline, and diesel. You know, this is sadly a global issue, and, you know, I fear that it is going to get worse before it gets better. That is just a reality. There's very little that we can do to control rising prices. I mean, prices are rising everywhere, and as such, it can be expected that they will rise here. There's ongoing discussions, of course, with the ministries to see what type of support can be given to the islands, not just here, but Statia and Bonaire as well. With the coalition agreement, money has been made available, 13 million per year, with the goal of, you know, looking to see what can be done about the cost of living and about poverty. So we have to see how those plans or proposals develop. But yeah, right now there's not much that we can really do to make a significant difference. That's just a sad reality of what's going on. Saba is at the end of the chain, so to speak. And like I said in a speech in Brussels, when America, for example, sneezes, we catch the flu. And that's just the reality of, yeah, where we're located into the bigger scheme of things. Maybe I can just quickly mention about the bidding process and contractors involved. I just got information that with the ongoing projects, there's 10 different contractors working on government projects as we speak. There's a bidding process for the jobs that go out, I guess. Yeah, it depends on the price and the availability and when projects can be started. But as of right now, there's 10 different contractors working on government projects. So also a question about a building inspector. Recently, we received funding from BZK for a position like this. It has been advertised, and there's ongoing negotiations with the preferred candidate to see when that person can start. So that's something that's in the pipeline, that's funding, and we anticipate that, you know, that's a position that will be active within a very short period of time. For the harbor project, I mean, gladly we can organize a visit for the council. I guess it's just a matter of checking calendars to see when everybody's available, but I'm happy to do so. It's progressing, not progressing the way that maybe we would like to see it. It has started with some delays, logistical delays, but it seems to be getting more and more on track. But yeah, once we verify with the calendars, happy to organize a site visit for the council. As for the hydroponic farm, I would say with confidence that it's far more stable than what it was in the past. We see regular produce coming out of the farm. Right now, the focus is on mainly 4 different crops, which is lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, and sweet peppers. And yeah, I heard this yesterday. I wasn't even aware of it. The harbor project, because part of that, they have a restaurant for the workers, like a cafeteria type setup. they've started taking 20 heads of lettuce every other day from the hydroponics farm. So, yeah, there's for sure demand, and we're looking to see how we can grow the harvest, because there's room for growth, and we're working onto that. About the Chance property, what I've understood that how that has been, they've reached out to the family. I don't know how far the discussions are, but you know, we've always expressed interest into acquiring that piece of property just because of the proximity to the Johan Cruyff Court and also the building where the library is. So it would only make sense that government buys it, but again, we see how complicated it is to actually purchase property. I mean, there's the piece of property opposite the Anglican church. Yeah, that has taken so long to get organized, and there's still some lingering matters that have to be worked out. But yeah, purchasing land is still a very complex issue for us here on the island. And as for Winner, we actually met with the CEO of Winner a few weeks ago. And yeah, it's clear that Winner isn't going to reduce the prices. They made it very clear that they're not going to cross-subsidize destinations. Meaning to say, if one destination is doing well, they're not going to charge less for a destination that's maybe not doing well. So, you know, they're very much about the business case and the success of it. The CEO did say that, you know, at that current moment, they weren't looking to increase the fuel surcharge as much as possible and as long as possible. They wanted to maintain that. One thing that was mentioned, and I don't know if that's been advertised or maybe even known to many, is that when there's cancellations to Seba because of, you know, whether it's congestion on the airport, before when they was saying that they wouldn't put up the people, but that has changed, and now they're making accommodations available for passengers that do get stuck on St. Martin because they're not able to, see the last flight be realized. But then that comes to the bigger discussion about the PSO, the public service obligation. And yeah, those discussions are still ongoing with BZK and Ian Way, more so BZK, to see what's possible. That's still a long process, and that's something that I've talked about quite a bit, where certain laws are being pushed quicker than others. And, you know, I believe that this is one that does have an impact on people. It does have an impact on people's freedom to travel. And, you know, the quality of their life. Someone has to go to a dentist because we don't have the regular dentist service here. And, you know, you have to pay $400 just to go to St. Martin to see a dentist. That's a big burden. So then you have to make a choice. Either you sit with toothache or you sacrifice to go to St. Martin to see a dentist. You know, that gets lost in discussions because who feels it knows. And, you know, for the most part, those in The Hague don't necessarily feel it because when they have a toothache, they can just walk down the road and go to a dentist. And that's just one example of many that can be given. So the rising costs and the high prices that are already there is worrisome. But when there is a business, and, you know, they are very much about the business case. And I remember very good about a discussion that was held here on Seba with the Parliament of St. Martin, and the Island Council of Statia was also here. And one of the Parliament members from St. Martin suggested that because we have a good relationship with the Netherlands, that we could negotiate a deal to wipe their loans clean, and then they would reduce the taxes on the airport. So that shows the level of commitment of, you know, them wanting to try to do something to help assist the island. And like you rightfully mentioned, I mean, Seba and Statia contribute quite a bit to the economies. So yeah, that's a pity. That's not much that we can do about it, but yeah, that's the reality of St. Martin politics. I believe I've addressed the questions that were posed to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. I now give the floor to Commissioner Heiliger, and then I have a question to answer, and then you give a...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I will answer the questions that I can, seeing that the questions was received last minute this morning. All civil servants were not prepared to answer all the questions fully, and I'm sure that the Island Council member would like the questions answered in full. So I will start first with the question that was posed to me with the apartment complex in the range. The question was, last year we approved a certain amount of money to build 3 buildings. It was actually for 7 homes, right, if I'm not mistaken, which would look like, well, yeah, it was actually for 7 homes. And the question is the money already on the account for this year? The interest-free loan, which was requested through the Island Council, and the special purpose grant for affordable housing in the range were received in the public entities account earlier this year. And the follow-up question to that was, when will the groundbreaking start for these apartments? And in recent weeks, the community has had the opportunity to share their preferences for the new homes through an online survey. And as I understand, through that survey, there was about 55 or more replies that came out of it, with individuals giving their insights on what type of homes they would like to see, size of the homes, etc. These insights are now used as a base for the program of requirements and design to better reflect community wishes. The goal is to finalize the design this year and begin construction before year's end, depending on the outcome of the public tender. So the goal is to see if we can do groundbreaking before the end of the year. There was a question on what are the criteria being used to select the new tenants? Who carries out these criteria? Will OYF be managing this in the future? The initial plan is to sell the new affordable homes, and I think that was also deliberated with the Island Council some months ago, if I'm not mistaken. There was a presentation that was given to the Island Council, and that was the idea. The idea was to actually build these homes for sale. And that was also in the request for the interest-free loan. Only when there is not enough interest, so enough interest to for sale, the houses will be rented out. Initial criteria for the new buyers or tenants are households with a medium income, residents of Sable that cannot buy a house on the market but earn too much to rent a social home. Other criteria will be determined in close collaboration with the executive and Island Council. A meeting with the Island Council will be scheduled for detailed update on this project in the coming weeks. The question on the technical school, you didn't answer, right? You didn't answer that, okay. There was a question on the new technical school and the multipurpose center buildings that are on schedule. The current construction of the technical center and new gym building is on schedule, with a planned delivery in the second half of next year. The design of the enrichment center is finalized. Still, some adjustments are needed. The current estimate for the new building is over budget, and currently, other funding resources are being explored to fill the gap. Either way, the construction will not start before the new gym and the technical center are nearly completed to ensure a safe passage for the students and staff of the high school, and enough parking and logistical space is available. And there was a question on, do we have a draft plan discussions already for the new daycare center, the Sable Heritage Foundation, and the public library? At the current moment, there are no architectural drawings or designs for the new spaces. For the child care center, a program of requirements has been developed. This needs to be translated into an actual plan. A program of requirements is pending for the Expertise and Knowledge Center. This will be started in the second and third quarters of 2026. Then there was a question on Youth Summit. There was an answer that was given to this, but I think the way how you explained it, I don't think the answer reflects to the idea that you had in mind. Your idea was to actually have the students come here, sit with the commissioner and have a chat on how things are going in school with them. But the answer that was given was completely different, so I think we have to get back to you with an answer on this. Or maybe sit with you to basically understand what the question pertaining to the Youth Summit is all about. And for the Sabre Summer Festival, or Sabre Carnival, let's put it like that, the 50th Carnival anniversary will be celebrated July 24th through August 2nd, 2026. This year, the Department of Community Development and Culture will take the lead with organizing and executing Carnival. Recruitment for committee members is in progress for support this year. So there was publication sent out for individuals to apply to become committee members. There were only 5 individuals that applied, 2 off island and 3 on island. So they're busy doing interviews with them at the moment. And I think that was the last question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. And there was one question that was posed by Island Council Member Mr. Wilson, which I will answer, and that is regarding the situation with the noise being emitted by the motorbikes, scooters, cars, trucks, and such. And yes, it is indeed a problem on our island, which is addressed regularly when we have meetings with the police and also the prosecutor. One of the suggestions that was made to the prosecutor is should videos be made of persons driving recklessly or making plenty noise with their vehicles or such, is that something that can be followed up upon? And apparently the legal framework does not allow this. The similar situation, as you all know, happens on Bonaire and Statia. So all 3 islands face this issue as of, well, not lately, but it is something that is becoming more and more, whereby the exhaust is being modified, or it's music, or it's whatever, but it is causing nuisance on all 3 islands. So this is something where we as governors have also addressed with the Public Prosecutor's Office, and we have also sent, a letter to the Attorney General that is something, it overarches a single island, it accounts for all 3 islands, so it's something which we need to address. But what I would recommend in the meantime is that we all, should we encounter that, to call 911. Yes, you could see, what is, the police could, or the melt camera could see, where is it, or the person had already passed. But it's good that, because all those signals are registered. So that is one of the ways we could go about it. But at the same time, there is another reality. You spoke about a youth summit, which is very good, because these young adults are also being encouraged by family members purchasing these scooters and such for them. Some of them are not 18 as yet. Some of them are 17, and they're being, the parents or family members are purchasing these scooters for them. And as you rightfully said, should something happen and an accident occurs, then it will be tears and what did the government do or not do. So as a community also, it's something which we need to address. These scooter riders and such are all members of our family, extended or not. So it's something as a community we also need to address. So I'll conclude it with that. And that concludes the first round. So now you have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions, and other council members can also, and then we'll do that. Island Council Member, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you very much, members of the Executive Council, for providing those answers and things. But, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to ask Commissioner Sagers, the OCT meeting that was held last in Aruba, and those before that, you know, with the EU, from the EU. Are we getting any projects out of that, them? I know we got the solar park, we got different things, the homes underneath the hill, and all of that and thing. What is it in there for us now? What type of projects, you know, and thing. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, to you, to Commissioner Halliger, I think Commissioner Halliger to start putting a board in place by the Housing Foundation, or a team that can start to negotiate with a bank, whether it's RBC or WIP or whatever, what's the bank, what come in her name now and then? ING, to get some of these apartments, if they say they're up for sale, if it can be, you know, that you can get the people and get loans for these apartments. You have to start some way to get it done. I had a plan there, but Hurricane George or Irma came, and they had wiped it out, and we had to do what? We had to go over it again to repair, you know? You have to help the people. You have to find a way to help your people. That have to be done. Because when you go now and you look at the bank and thing now, the prices is high. You know what I mean? My colleague again, like I always was telling, both of them, you know what I mean? Try and get a house, you know, build and get land and build and all that. And he said, Rolly boy, prices is high. Interest rates are high. You know, and I feel for a lot of people. Mr. Chairman here, not calling his name for nothing. 2 years he had to wait before he could have got a mortgage loan. I'm not saying he's talking his business, you know, but it's true. No, it's true. It isn't like before when we go there by RBC, a WIP and all that all the time, you know, you go, you ask for loan, you got a contractor, do a price for it, go sign it and ta. And you go by Mr. Bruce Myers, the deceased or whatever, I'll be saying you. Within 2 weeks, you have your loan. Now it's faster for you to get a $60,000 or $70,000 SUV. I'm telling you, each time the boat, now God forbid I got nothing against nobody getting vehicles. Each time the multi-pride them come here, I get confused sometimes. You see in a new car, a new SUV, a new, what do you call them, I-10 or whatever it is, different type of things and things. Yeah, you know, like I said, they're there. The dealers is there, and I come to buy a car. Of course, I'm going to sell it. You know what I mean? But we got to help our people get a home. Je moet eigen baas zijn in een eigen huis. You know? Sure, I could knock up 10 apartments. They go to the bank and get a $500,000 loan and build apartments and rent it out. But that's in my interest. You know? I want to see young people get their own home. That's what I like to see. And there we as a government, we have to try and promote that and help them to do that. Talk with the banks, sit down with the banks. You know, and ING coming in here, I hope they're coming in here to help people and just not to be like the rest of them giving these loans for vehicles and things. You know? No. We have to know by prognosis now, in our days, before I build something, I know how much it costs and how much I can rent it for. We have to see, you have to sit down, you have to see these things now. You can't run away from it. It might go overboard, yes, it happens, over budget and things, but you have to have a beginning. And when you have a beginning, you have to have an end. You have to, this will cost this. People can start, the tenants who want to rent it out, they can start to go to the banks and all of this, and so is the case. I would like to think that. Get the loan, I have this in collateral and all of that. You know, so I think we have a lot of our homework to do, and I think before the end of the year and thing, because we have in the budget debate coming up and different things coming up now, we should have more answers and things, constructive answers pertaining to these things. You know? It's our people we got to help. We got to help the people. They are balling with sky-high rent, $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200. I myself have apartments and I hear them balling. No, it's the truth. It's the truth. I hear them balling. $1,500 for a house, 6 and 7. You know what I mean? You got to have good salaries for that. We got to help our people. Because I'm gonna tell you, next year this time, before then, Helgum broke loose. We don't know where we're standing. You're hearing 6 and 7 political parties running. My friend again, Vito there. You know, you don't know where we're going to be. No, it's the truth. You have to help. That was just a joke in between, but you have to help your people. We are there to help people. I don't want to see no more social homes. That was in the past when I was there. You know, I want to see every Sabian who can afford it have their home. Eichenbass and Eichenhuis. I've brought forward here the Mistress Liberia Peters land. I've mentioned it. I don't have any more thing about it. Man, you can start looking around. You can get money, put a good plan together. We have so many policy advisors here in this building. Wherever you look, policy advisors. Come on, man, put a plan together. We need it. And as long as I'm here, God give me the strength and breath, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to challenge my government with that. We are here to help the people, not just 6 or 3 months before election. We are here to help the people. Let's put our heads together. And I'm looking for the support for all council members when it comes to that. It isn't for no political party. We have to help the people. We took an oath right here to help the people. Let's do things now. No more joking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Island Council Member Mr. Wilson. Based on the questions posed by Mr. Wilson and the answers provided, did any other council members have questions based on that? None? Okay, there was one. Yeah, okay. Island Council Lady, Ms. Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take this opportunity since my colleague mentioned the Black Rocks Harbor to just ask about the recent issue with the silt in the water and if there's an update since for the community on what is being done for the environmental mitigation. Because I know we had a lot of measures done before the project could have started, and then this happened, and you know, some different people reached out to me. The dive, one of well, we only have one now, the dive shop, and some other people like environmentally inclined. And I was just wondering, you know, what the update was on that. You know, that's not really my thing, so.
Thank you, Island Council Lady, Ms. Matthew. Okay, so there was a few questions posed, follow-up questions posed by Island Council Member Wilson, and then there was one also from Island Council Lady Matthew. The first question was about the OCT, and that is for Commissioner Hager. You had said Commissioner Zegas, but I think that's Commissioner Hager. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, yes, I did have the opportunity to attend the OCT trilaterals that were held on Aruba last week up until, on behalf of the island. I did have the opportunity to also give some statements, which they call political statements. And in my political statements, I was basically talking about what we need for the island to continue development and for progress to move forward. And I touched on the topics such as we were lacking funding for the development of the land side of the harbor project. We also have the ongoing solar project that is about to start or has started. Also, we were lobbying for opportunities for better data, telecom, communication on the island, or connections on the island, and also regional collaboration on topics such as import and regional travel, which has become very expensive. As you know, when you have these discussions, then it goes to a different level where you have to put in proposals to ask for funding. And that part sometimes comes with a little headache because you need a little bit of expertise in that area to assist the civil servants that we have here on the island into submitting these proposals. What also came out of the trilaterals was also a vision that the EU has, which is in the sense of digital connectivity. And this is something that still actually they're looking at. And what they were looking at is a cable that would run from Portugal to either Saba or Statia as a landing point. And then that cable would branch off to the other islands in the immediate surrounding. And also they were looking at, and which they are actually looking at strongly, is geothermal connection. And they were looking at two islands. One was namely St. Kitts and the other one was Dominica. But for them, the main island was actually St. Kitts. And that would be connecting the islands with a geothermal cable for energy use. So with that said, I can give the Island Council an update. I could also share the political statements I had to make with the Island Council. We did do a press release. I don't know if it reached the Island Council, but I could also share that with them also. In regards to social housing, I do agree with with Councilmember Wilson that it's time now for individuals, especially middle-income and also the lower-income individuals, to own a home once and for all. It's long overdue. Yeah, I'm getting a loan through the bank's mortgages at this moment. We all know it's very difficult. It does really make sense to really sit with the banks as a government and see how they could assist our locals in obtaining these mortgages. But, you know, banks also have their procedures too, and it's always about who qualify from who don't qualify in their system. But I do agree with you that it's time enough for individuals to actually own their own home.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. Commissioner Zegers, I believe there was something for you also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember indeed when there was quite an alarming scene at the harbor project with the silt. It was also brought to my attention pretty immediately by many different stakeholders who were rather concerned. I myself was rather concerned. And even though I want to see the project move forward, we can't cut off our nose to spite our face. And having a new harbor shouldn't come at the expense of, destroying the marine life, around the island. Measures were taken right away as soon as it became, seen that, we were probably exceeding the limitations that are in the permit. So dredging stopped basically immediately. And, one thing that has changed right away that we see an immediate result, and this has been expressed not only by the SCF, but also by the dive shop, that it's a huge improvement, so they're not overly concerned anymore, is that when they're dredging the material now, they're not directly dumping it back in the sea. So what they're doing now, they're taking it up, dumping it on land, and then only using the more solid materials once it's dried to build out the platforms that are being built now for dredging. So before, they would just dig it up and place it back in the sea, so then you get it twice. You get it when it's being dug, and then you get it again when it's being dumped back in. And so once you start to doing that, you could see an almost immediate result. And, of course, the harbor project got blamed for the discoloration of the water, but that, wasn't the only cause. It also came at the same time that he had a very large ground sea. And, a lot of that was also being, coming from the Tent Bay area. So, it was excessive, and for sure the harbor project contributed greatly to it. But since they've started doing this way of dredging, we see, a drastic improvement. The contractor is also looking at bubble screens. These are pipes that get placed on the ocean floor, and then they push air through it and bubbles come up that help to block the silt from moving. And that is something that we hope to see in place, in the coming weeks. But already with the steps that have been taken, the stakeholders are quite content with the way it's being done right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegas. We now continue. That concludes the questions and answers by Island Council Member Mr. Wilson. We now continue with the questions by Island Council Lady Miss Elsa Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, good afternoon to everyone listening in and also everyone here today. So I have a few topics I would like to address today, which I will follow up with some questions, of course. My first topic is an update on the motion for tuition and housing policy. This motion was intended to revise and increase the support for students who do not currently get study financing due to their study not falling within the framework of study financing by the Dutch government. It's unfortunate that I have to even mention that it's now been 3 years since I presented this motion, which was passed unanimously by this council. Some students who needed this support desperately at the time has since moved on and even graduated. While updates have been provided over time, the policy is still not into effect today. So can the Executive Council please provide a clear update on the status of this policy and specify a concrete timeline for when it will be fully implemented? And given the length of time that has passed since the adoption, can the Executive Council explain the reasons for the delay and identify any outstanding barriers preventing implementation? In addition, can the Executive Council clarify how motions passed by this council are prioritized, particularly in serious or urgent cases? And I'm asking this because I have sat here and seen motions less urgent receive the urgency that this policy desires. So I hope we can all agree and see this move forward as soon as possible. Continue. My second point is the understaffing at Absolute Childcare, known to all of us as the daycare. And Mr. Chairman, over the past few months, we have seen a growing strain within one of the most important sectors in our community, and this is the childcare facility. I understand that several caretakers have recently left Absolute Childcare to pursue other employment opportunities, which is of course in their right to do so. However, this has placed a notable strain on the remaining staff and raises real concerns on and about ongoing understaffing and the quality and continuity of the care being provided. Because when we talk about childcare, Mr. Chairman, we are not just talking about babysitting. We are talking about care, safety, developing the minds of our young children. And right now, that responsibility is being carried out by a group of individuals who continue to show up every single day, despite staffing shortages, long hours, and while pursuing their own professional development, where many of them are currently working towards their MBO Level 3. So before I ask my questions, Mr. Chairman, I would want to say this clearly and publicly to the staff and management of Absolute Childcare. I would like to thank you. And thank you for your patience, your resilience, your commitment, for continuing to do the work that you do, because this is not just a job, it's a work of heart. Caring for large groups of children all at the same time is not easy, and it becomes even harder when you are doing it at under capacity. Too often, we only speak when something goes wrong or when a group has to close at the daycare and when pressure reaches a breaking point. But we must also speak as loudly when things are going right and to recognize the staff. Because trust me, consistency under pressure is not just good luck, it is dedication. And that deserves more than acknowledgement, it deserves real support. And that brings me to the core of this issue, which I will go into my questions. I would like the Executive Council to confirm whether new staff has been recruited. If so, How many? What is their expected start date? And will this be sufficient to adequately address the current staffing shortage? In the interim, what measures are being taken to ensure that staffing levels remain safe and compliant with childcare regulations, particularly in relation to staff-to-child ratios? And my final question on this point is, looking beyond the immediate staffing shortage, what steps is the Executive Council taking to develop a sustainable local pipeline of qualified childcare workers? Specifically, given that a recognized qualification such as the Caribbean Vocational Qualification 2, CVQ2, is the minimum requirement under childcare legislation. How is the council ensuring that these training opportunities are made accessible to the wider community and not only to existing childcare staff? Additionally, what measures are being taken to ensure that when vacancies arise, there is a readily available pool of locally trained and qualified individuals to fill these roles, both within daycare services and across the broader care sector? And I ask this because it's important for me and the public to understand how are we building a future workforce if access to training is not continuous and open to those who want to enter the field. If we are serious about strengthening childcare, then we must move beyond reacting just to shortages, and we must start building a sustainable pipeline of qualified, locally trained pedagogical workers. In simple terms, we need to invest consistently in our own people. That concludes my points for this section, and my final point is on the topic of road safety. So as we all know, and I think has been mentioned before as well, during Island Council member Wilson point, road safety remains a long-standing concern on our island, and unfortunately, it does not seem to be improving at the rate we would want to see it. With the continued increase in vehicles, along with the growing presence of scooters and bikes, and the risk on our roads are becoming more evident. There are several areas where accidents have occurred repeatedly, indicating a need for more targeted intervention as well. Is the Executive Council currently assessing and prioritizing high-risk areas that are known for frequent traffic accidents, such as the road by Sable Wishes, the Bunk area, and similar locations? If so, what specific measures are being considered to improve safety in these areas? Additionally, how is the issue of vehicles parking on corners, which reduces visibility and increases risk, being addressed and also enforced? Additionally, I would like to ask on the speed bump situation. Many of the speed bumps across the island are visibly deteriorating and may no longer be serving their intended purpose effectively. Can the Executive Council give a timeline for their repair or replacement? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Ms. Elsa Peterson. We will now begin with the answers to your questions. And the first two parts are for Commissioner Heiligel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sorry. So the first question was the update on the motion on the tuition and housing policy. I also find it very unfortunate that it took so long, but the holdup was not really with us, but it was from on the side of DUA. And of course, you want everything to be done legal so that in the end, the students don't face no challenges. To answer the question, can the Executive Council provide a clear update on the status of this policy and specify a concrete timeline for when it will be fully implemented? The policy is currently under review by PNC together with CDC to determine the exact budgetary adjustments required to implement the newly established rates. These reviews are being finalized in coordination with the team and will take place imminently. The necessary adjustments will then be incorporated into the basic proposal and submitted for approval. Following approval, implementation can proceed without delay. And I think they were looking forward for this happening in the next Island Council meeting, which is scheduled for June, sorry. In May? Okay. And the follow-up question to that was, given the length of time that has passed since adoption, can the Executive Council explain the reasons for the delay and identify any outstanding barriers preventing implementation? In addition to the department handling very large topics with limited capacity, the delay was primarily due to an extended research process conducted by OSEWA regarding the appropriate levels for study financing. In addition, the policy requires corresponding budget adjustments, which may involve a formal amendment. At this stage, aside from finalizing these financial adjustments, we do not foresee any further barriers to implementation. And then there were some questions from Absolute Child Daycare. I just received the answers to these questions that were asked. To address the current operations at the Absolute Child Daycare, while indeed they are understaffed, the supervision, the child-to-adult ratio currently meets the base requirement. However, the grouping exceeds the recommended maximum. This is why the new hires are imperative to ensure that quality of care is not compromised. So there are some new hires that were hired. Some are off island, so they have yet to come to the island. It was a maximum of 8 new employees, and they will replace those that have resigned. In the interim, assistance has been solicited within the domain to support supervision during periods of strain. Seasonal employment opportunities have been offered to individuals interested in the field, and summer jobs continue to provide to students to help generate early interest in childcare careers. With regard to workforce development, the SPW3 course is currently available, and existing staff are enrolled to further enhance their qualifications. While the CVQ2 program is no longer offered by the previous institution, alternative options are being explored to reintroduce similar certification pathways. The SPW3 program can also be pursued as a full course of study, and this presents an opportunity to make training more accessible to individuals on island who are interested in entering the childcare sector. To support retention, consideration is being given to bonding students to the daycare for a period of 2 to 3 years following completion of their studies. This would help provide stability and support the continued growth and expansion of Absolute Care. Additionally, partnerships with regional training institutions may be explored to access a wider pool of qualified candidates and potentially facilitate on-island training opportunities. Finally, there is a clear need to strengthen workforce planning through ongoing analysis of enrollment trends. Allowing staff needs to be anticipated and recruitment processes initiated in a more timely manner. And that was the communication I had to share.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. Commissioner Zegers, that's one for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's fair to say that road safety is a concern for both councils and the community at large. We don't have to look too far to see what happens when road safety isn't taken too serious. I mean, just look at the events. I believe it was, 2 days ago in St. Martin. I mean, very sad, but also a reality of what's going on when it's not taken serious. There was a risk analysis that was carried out with input from the safety partners very recently about road safety. Several high-risk areas were indicated, including there by the Arawak Hotel, the Trail Shop, Siba Wishes, Siba Emporium, and the Bunk area. These bottlenecks areas across the island, also from an emergency service perspective, action points include receiving advice from the police on designated areas for the placement of no parking signs and drawing of lines, among other action points related to enforcement and awareness. And communication about these steps will be forthcoming shortly about where these signs would be placed and new lines would be drawn. But again, you know, it comes down to a point that's also being always brought forward by Council Member Charles about a mobility plan. And that's something that, you know, we need to take the next steps on, because we see that, you know, almost every week there's more and more cars coming to the island, whereas, you know, parking is becoming an issue. Cars are parking around corners, as you rightfully mentioned into your question. So this is something that, you know, we need to take maybe something that may not be a very popular decision on in the near future, but something that has to be done. One of the areas that has been identified on numerous occasions is the area by Arawak, and the safety of people that's coming and going from the hotel area. And, you know, we do anticipate that, you know, we will start with the project there before the summer. Discussions are pretty much being finalized with the landowners in that area to have the road widened, a sidewalk put in, proper lighting. So that is something that, you know, when we do it, the intention is to do it the right way the first time. So that's something that, yeah, it's anticipated should start before the summer. As for the speed bumps, there's also a reality of, you know, what happens when there's so many projects that's going on from one end of the island to the next. So you immediately see the wear and tear onto the rubber speed bumps that's being used because of such heavy equipment that's driving up and down on it pretty much on a regular basis now. And indeed, several of those speed bumps, you know, are damaged. New speed bumps have been ordered, and as soon as they arrive, the damaged ones will be replaced. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegas. That concludes the first round. I now give the floor back to Island Council Lady, Ms. Elsa Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both commissioners for your responses as well. I just have a few follow-up questions. I'll start with the tuition and housing policy. Just to say this publicly again, we have received several updates regarding the policy, of course, over the last few years. So we know that certain things needed to happen on the side of Duo. And you just mentioned, I guess, one of the final parts right now would require a budget amendment. And I would like to know, because next month we have a budget amendment on our agenda, well, it will be added to the agenda, and I just wanted to know if this is something that can be added into that budget amendment. Otherwise, the next one won't be until probably after the summer. So I would like to know of the possibility of that happening. Also, the school year is coming to an end again by June, which means more students will be pursuing higher education. And again, you'll have those students that fall through the loophole that may want to study in the region or go to pilot school, which we've had numerous students over the years go to, and amongst other studies that also, again, do not fall within the framework of study finance. And I think it's important that we get this done as soon as possible. So if you could please look into the possibility of that being added to the next budget amendment, that would be amazing. And the question, I don't know if I missed it, but I didn't hear the question answer on how motions are prioritized. So if one of you could also address that point. And to go back to the daycare, if Commissioner Heliger can also clarify, because you mentioned 8 new employees and some have to come from abroad, which I would assume that requires some I&D work. Can you just clarify if they will go through an expedited process, as I would consider them to be essential workers? Or how will this work in this regard, to get them on the island as soon as possible? And also just a clarification question. Again, the trainings offered are for existing staff members. I know of both the afternoon school care as well, the daycare also. I understand some EC2 workers are also part of these trainings. But again, this is for existing staff. So could you clarify, because you mentioned something about these opportunities being offered more broadly. Could you just clarify that that is what you mentioned? And for road safety, Commissioner Zegers mentioned that an assessment was done. If this was a report of something, is that a report that can be shared with the council at this time as well? And you also mentioned some road widening in the area of Arawak Hotel. You also mentioned earlier that Lambie's Place was in this plan. Does that also require some road widening in that area? And a final question is that sometime last year, land was purchased in the bottom by the government for additional parking. Could you give an update on that as well? Because I don't think we've heard anything about it since the purchase. And that will conclude my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Ms. Peterson, for those follow-up questions for the second round. Did any other Island Council member have follow-up questions based on the answers provided? Well, then, Island Council Member Charles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wanting to follow up on the area of road safety, because I also, you mentioned about no parking areas, but then I also know that, for instance, there's areas in Riverside and also in the bottom where there's already indications you shouldn't park there, and we see that those, signs are, neglect or ignored rather by drivers, and then nobody. I've also seen situations, I'm not sure how it works. Maybe you have officers that come from abroad, and then they're not aware of the situation, because we do have some areas where you can park on the side of the street and other areas where you can't. So it might be something about orientation and also awareness, because I see often, one person begins parking there, then later on you see more people parking there, and then at one point it just becomes a free-for-all. And I think, rules are meant to be followed. So I'm just wondering how that would be addressed. And then recently I was having a conversation, this also ties in specifically to road safety, and you mentioned how the heavy machinery impacts the speed bumps. And recently somebody mentioned, do we do an assessment of the weight of vehicles that our roads can handle in general? Because, we do have a lot of construction going on the island, and we have heavy vehicles traversing the island. So I just wonder, how do we address that?
Thank you, Island Council Member Mr. Charles. Island Council Lady Ms. Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I decided to just jump in because I had similar questions. With regards to what my colleague just mentioned about the strain on the roads, and I think it was a meeting that we had in sometime in 2024, the speed bumps and the heavy machinery was already a discussion, and then there was talk of road condition mapping by Q1 of 2025. I don't know if was the status on this GIS-based map and on the road conditions, so maybe that's something somewhere still out there to tie into that question. I also had the subject of the widening at Lambie's Place, which was also something that was supposed to be done in Q1 of 2025. So just wondering if there was any assessments or engagements with stakeholders or anything since the last conversation we had. And then on the matter of road safety, there was the incident that happened close to Arawak in January of this year. And then there was a notice talking about implementing road safety measures, including widening sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, lighting, speed bumps, and safety wall upgrades. And I just want to clarify what the commissioner alluded to a while ago. He was saying that this would begin before the beginning of summer or at the beginning of summer. And if those things are like in the planning that you mentioned a while ago. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady, Ms. Matthew. So first we'll begin with Commissioner Heiliger, because Island Council Lady, Ms. Peterson asked some follow-up questions about the daycare and the policy that was provided, and then we'll go on to Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I was just trying to make some contact to see if it's possible to get the tuition and housing policy on the floor for the next Central Committee and Island Council meeting, and we'll try to make it happen, which will be May 28th and 29th, I think. In regards to the question on early child care, you asked about if those that coming in from abroad have to go through a process. Yes, so, unfortunately, that has to be done with IND because they need to do a background check on all individuals that come to the island, especially for employment. So, and that sometimes can take a very, very, very long time. It's supposed to be 6 weeks, sometimes it goes into months, something that no one has control over but themselves. And that is also because, I guess, wherever they have to get, I think what they call a VOK from, something so. So, yeah. And also, you also had a question about regarding the broader training for childhood. Can this be a question that we get back to you with in the coming days? I'll try to get our question answered and send back to you digitally, if it's possible, or if you want it in written form. Did I miss any question?
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. Commissioner Zegers, the questions posed about road safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I go over to the road safety one, there was also a question about how motions are being prioritized. I'm not sure if I can, fully answer that. But, it's also, I believe one of the bigger factors is about the practicalities of the motion. For example, the one with the education policy, that was directly linked to something with Osei Way that also caused delays. So some motions are easier to implement or execute just based on the nature of them. Others take a bit longer. But yeah, maybe it's wise to have a group discussion about, how it's being done, why certain things are being done maybe quicker than others. But that's something I think that we should just have an open discussion about. Because, yeah, to give a very clear answer right now, it's rather difficult. But, yeah, I do want to say something about it. Sometimes it's a bit easier to implement, some motions just based on the nature of them versus other ones. And the education policy one was a good example of that because, yeah, like you said, it was unanimously passed, and there was also the ambition from the Executive Council to, yeah, have it completed. But, yeah, one of the hurdles was with Osei Way ensuring that, yeah, it was being done the right way. But just a few words about that. I don't know if the governor wants to add something later on, but
Well, I'll just chime in right now. But like you said, I think it's something good that we discuss in a different forum with all present and the support staff of the island secretary and the registrar, that we on one page about the how, the what, the when, and the who.
as for the safety assessment, I'll check to see if that can be shared. That was done with the department that we have internally and with the police. I'm not sure if that is going to be a public document, but we will follow up to see if that can be shared. As for the area by Lambie's Place, that was also brought up by other council lady. That is still in discussions with the stakeholders to see what is possible. And, you know, indeed, it had been indicated that it should have been done earlier. Unfortunately, that has not materialized, obviously, but still very much part of the plan, but we just have to see, you know, what is possible and, yeah, what the landowners in that area are willing to give or to, yeah, sacrifice in order to improve road safety. With the regards to the no parking signs being ignored, yeah, we see that all over the island. And maybe it is a lack of orientation with the police, but that's something that, yeah, they need to have a better handle over to ensure that, you know, the signs are being respected. As for the weight that our roads can handle, very good question. We all know that, yeah, the majority of our roads are very old, built in a very basic way back in the day, but nevertheless, the roads have proven that, yeah, they could withstand the pressures that they receive right now. Something that Public Works actively does is that when they're in areas where they're working either on safety walls or road widenings, they always check the foundations of those roads, and yeah, in many instances they've strengthened those foundations. But to say there's an island-wide assessment, that still has not been done, and that ties into the question about the GIS system. You know, that is there and it continues to be updated, but the layer which would be of roads and, you know, where areas of roads need to be strengthened or widened or foundations fixed, that's a layer that still has to be added to the system because it is a very complex system, and it does take, yeah, time and, yeah, certain expertise in order to do it, that all the layers tie in together, but that is still a work in progress. And eventually, you know, the question about the assessment of how much weight the roads can carry or what roads still need to be, you know, see improvements being made to the foundation, that is something that would be eventually added to that GIS system. And about the Arawak road widening area, the idea is that it starts in the, before the summer.
Thank you. That's how it's. Island Council Lady Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Zegers, you mentioned about the report not knowing if it can be shared, and it's okay if it can't, but then I would like to ask if it's possible for us to get one of the information markets, that then we could address any concerns with the relevant stakeholders there. And then additionally, you didn't answer the question about the parking in the bottom with the land that was purchased. Thank you.
No, you're indeed correct. I did not answer that one. Right now, the plans are being finalized, so on the verge of starting the project. One of the bigger concerns right now when, yeah, looking at from a safety perspective again, entering and exiting the parking lot, we're trying to see how that can be done in a safer manner than what the original plan yeah, called for. So that's something that's rather close to starting. It's just a matter of ensuring that from a safety perspective, because we all know that's a busy intersection area, especially, you know, people going down by the insurance office. Yeah, it's right in the main area of entering and leaving the bottom. So we want to make sure that, yeah, the entry and exit points are done in a way that's safe, that cars going in and coming out can do so safely. But the project is on the verge of starting once that is properly figured out.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. That concludes this round of questions by Island Council Lady Ms. Peterson and the answers provided by the commissioners and myself. Now we go on to Island Council Member Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just also want to acknowledge today that we're here using this new system, and while it has, you know, it didn't seem like it's taken a long time, I just want to remark that this started back in 2019 when there was a previous council. And at that time, the population had, since then, and even before that, the population has always felt that it's important for them to hear and listen in to the discussions that the council has. So I'm very happy that this has finally been realized today. It might have been a bit more costlier than was anticipated, but nonetheless, I think we already have heard reports, Facebook and everything works very quickly. Social media works very quickly, and we already have received reports of how much more improved the quality of the audio and the quality of the video are. So I do hope that, it means that more people will take the opportunity to listen in and get involved in understanding what their government is doing, and they can also hear what's happening in a more meaningful way. So I just also want to congratulate everybody that made this a reality, because it wasn't always an easy task. Not everybody agreed with moving in this direction, but nonetheless, we are here now, and I hope that it is beneficial to the improvement of democracy on this island. My first set of questions in regards to, and the Commissioner alluded to it earlier when we spoke, when he mentioned the $30 million that has been allocated for the entire Caribbean Netherlands annually, structurally, by the national government to reduce the cost of living. And this was brought to our attention, I think I saw initially a media report about it, and then when the State Secretary was here, he also mentioned it to us and, asked for our ideas about what we thought it should be allocated towards, and he indicated, he said, listen, there's only 30 million, and, our wishes might be great, but resources are limited. So I think rather than duplicating efforts, I think it should be something that we come together and collaborate to see what is important, what SABRE expects, what we want, what we think we need, and how it should be done. So in line with that, can the Executive Council provide an update on discussions that took place during that visit? And what specific input did the Executive Council provide regarding the allocation of these funds? How does the Executive Council intend to ensure that SABRE benefits from these resources? And what priorities or concrete measures has the Executive Council identified to reduce the cost of living on the island? Continue. Yeah. My next set of questions are about the mobility plan, and I think we've all heard earlier today how important it is because, yes, the number of cars on the island is increasing. The safety of traffic on the road has become more and more of a concern. And I think it is beyond time that we do something. We live on a small island, and we could build a few more roads, we can build more parking lots, but in reality, there's limited options. And at some point, we have to make some choices, and everybody has to, agree that those are the choices that are necessary for us to continue to enjoy this island. I recently ran into somebody who hadn't been on the island. They are visited to the island, and they hadn't been on the island, I think they told me, about 4 or 5 years. And the first thing that they took note of was the increased number of cars and the amount of traffic on the island. I remember last year I was on the airport in St. Martin, and these tourists who had just visited SABRE, of course they didn't know who I was, and I listened in on their conversation, and they mentioned that they were quite surprised by the amount of traffic on SABRE, so it's already having an impact on the tourism industry, and they remarked that there was less traffic on Dominica than there was on SABRE. So I think it is important that measures are taken so that we can do something. During a council meeting in February of 2025, the Executive Council made a commitment to develop a mobility plan to address this issue. can the Executive Council provide an update on the status of this mobility plan? And what is the expected timeline for its completion and presentation to the Island Council? My final set of questions in regards to the to connectivity. Recently, the Edge Ferry was sold. They've been coming here for a number of years, and that means that there's one less option for coming to and leaving the island. So, with increased fares already from Winair, and I think while there is a schedule from the Makana, it's sometimes less than ideal. And in particularly, I'm looking at now we have St. Martin's Carnival, and people used to take the Edge to, for instance, go to St. Martin on the weekends because it left on a Friday. It was a cheaper option than Winair. And of course, that now is absent. So I'm just wondering, can the Executive Council provide any update on any discussions that have taken place with relevant stakeholders since the announcement by the Edge Ferry? Which stakeholders have been engaged, and what options are currently being considered to mitigate the impact on connectivity? And my last set of questions are in regard to the Socioeconomic Development Master Plan. I took note on social media and the government's website that they had recently released a Socioeconomic Development Master Plan. The Island Council participated in, I guess, in a discussion group with those that developed the master plan. Then we didn't really hear anything since then, and of course this master plan came out. And I was just wondering, there wasn't really any opportunity to contribute after those initial discussions, but there's a lot of engagement on social media about it, and I think which is healthy because that means people have taken note of it and they want to contribute. So I'm just wondering, can the Executive Council elaborate on how it intends to actively engage the community in the implementation of this plan? And what mechanisms will be used to ensure that stakeholders across different sectors are informed and able to provide input? And what is the expected timeline for this engagement process? Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council Member Mr. Charles. And we now proceed with the answers to your questions. We'll begin with Commissioner Sagers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the questions, Mr. Charles, Councilmember Charles. With regards to the visit of the State Secretary and the $30 million that was made or announced during the coalition formation and then ultimately the agreement. So far, the process of how that $30 million will be divided amongst the three islands still isn't fully clear. What we do know is that there's discussions internally at the ministry level about priorities of how that money should be shared and, what it should go towards. There is a fear that it's, once again, an example, at least a fear that I have, that's an example of that they're talking about us and not necessarily with us. We've stressed from the very beginning that we want to be a part of those discussions. And, there has been discussions about it, but we don't know for sure, whether that, how much weight our ideas, have in those discussions at the ministry level. Of course, the obvious things come up, like, funding for the PSO. And, that was also one of the ideas that was shared during that visit, actually by the Ministry of Basic Ed, that they were looking, at that pocket of funding as a possible solution. Whether a full amount or a partial amount would come from that budget. But then also, what at least we've understood is that, subsidies that are available right now that aren't structural, so subsidies for energy, for the fixed tariff, for water, for telecommunication, they're also looking at using that budget to make, the incidental subsidy structural. For the three islands, and that alone would take, a large, almost a lion's share of that $30 million away. So we still have to see exactly how, that gets shared up. We also don't know how much each island's going to get because, again, you know, it's 13 million for 3 islands, not 13 million for one. And, you know, I'm pretty sure within a half an hour, if it's 13 million for Saba, we can figure out how to spend it pretty quickly. But that's, yeah, unfortunately not the reality. So that's still a work in progress. You had some individual questions, but I've answered it more in a general way. And I believe it is smart that, you know, in another session, we sit together to really map out a joint plan, because it makes no sense for the Island Council to say A and the Executive Council says B about what should be a priority, because I do think at some point, you know, what's being discussed at the ministry level will be brought to the islands for input. So I do think that how it's smart that, you know, we have a discussion together to see exactly how we see the priority for Saba. You know, is it something that we want to see the social minimum being raised, or, you know, is it a priority that, you know, we look at the cost side of things? In the past, a lot of emphasis has been made on increasing minimum wage and you know, implementing a social minimum, and there's been less focus on what's actually causing the high cost of living. So that's something that I hope that we can schedule in the near future. As for the mobility plan, this has been discussed several times, and you rightfully suggested in February of 2025, and I believe it's even been discussed since then. I'm pretty sure it has been discussed since then. Regrettably, you know, we did not have a dedicated person working on a mobility plan. A vacancy should go out, I believe, either this week or next week for a dedicated person for connectivity and mobility. We've had discussions already with the VNG to see if they can make an expert available to help guide that process to, you know, build a mobility plan. I do believe that, you know, we can look at, other countries that do it better than we've done it without doing anything, like Bermuda, for example. They have, you know, very strict regulations with traffic, with the number of cars and road safety. So I do believe that, you know, something like that can be established pretty quickly by just learning from countries that has a system that works. And I use Bermuda as an example. I'm sure there's other areas that have functional mobility plans. And with the assistance of the VNG and having someone that's dedicated towards that role of making it happen, I think is a big improvement. And I hope that during the course of this year, we can have a mobility plan, because it's something, I mean, every council member this afternoon has spoken about road safety. I don't believe there's a day that doesn't go by that I don't have someone complain to me about, you know, what's going on the roads. I'm sure it's the same for the council members. So there is an issue not just in this room, but an issue that has an impact on the people pretty much on a daily basis. With regards to with connectivity and the sad reality that the EDGE was sold, that was news that came across rather shockingly to everyone on Saba. The EDGE had been servicing Saba for 33 years, not just one or two. I mean, that is a huge impact. I know of people that came to Saba for the first time on the EDGE and, you know, enjoyed the island so much that, Saba became a regular vacation destination. And, you know, that was just because of one day trip. So, you know, indeed, it's going to be hard to fill that void. And, you know, I would like to say it here that, you know, I'm very much appreciative of those 33 years of service. I think that how, you know, we have to look at a way to recognize that at some point. And saying that pretty much immediately after we heard that the EDGE was sold and that the service would stop immediately, you know, we reached out to Winner to see about possibilities of introducing more day trip fares. That has been quite popular since they were doing it, but we want to see if that can be expanded upon. And we've also had extensive discussions with the Makana to see if, you know, how day trips can be incorporated into their schedule. And I do believe that there's possibilities, at least for one day, a day trip from St. Martin. That's not possible right now. But we do need a cooperation from border control. We know how those discussions can go. They're not always the most flexible with schedules. But I'm hoping that that's something that can materialize within short. You mentioned about the Friday connectivity to St. Martin. That's something that Makana is open to. and it's just a matter of rerouting the ferry rather than going from Statia directly to St. Martin. It would come to Saba and then onwards to St. Martin. So that seems to be something that can be done in the short term to ensure that we have that weekend connectivity to St. Martin on a Friday. But the discussions are ongoing, and again, a lot will be determined, especially for the day trip, depending on how cooperative border control is. The willingness is there, but yeah, that step is necessary in order to make it a reality, and those discussions are ongoing. As for the socio-economic development master plan, this plan should be seen as more of a high-level roadmap where we outline priorities, areas that we want to focus on. And like you mentioned, the Island Council members were involved during the initial process, but also several local stakeholders. And I also saw the concerns on Facebook where especially small business owners, looking at a press release and also looking at a report, I guess, found it difficult to find themselves within it. And I can imagine that's indeed the case. But it should have also been made clear that we're working on an implementation strategy together with AZK and RVO to see exactly how do we take this roadmap and turn it into a working document that leads the way of how we can make tangible improvements. So that's something that the high-level roadmap is the first step, and now we're working on an implementation strategy. So I do believe once we get there that businesses should be able to find themselves within that implementation strategy. And I don't necessarily have a timeline when that will be ready because that's still ongoing, especially with AZK. And one last point about connectivity. I don't want to exclude that point. Almost immediately after the news came out about the edge being sold, I also met with the Civil Business Association who also expressed the deep concern about the gap that had been created and the impact it would have on tourism and business on the island. So they're also involved, and I'm updating them regular as discussions are ongoing.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. I give the floor back in the second round now to Island Council Member, Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. Appreciate your updates and your thorough responses to the question. I just want to ask a follow-up in regards to 30 million, because you mentioned how it is an idea of the, I guess, the coalition. It was presented when the coalition agreement was signed. So and it's supposed to be shared between 3 islands. When we were in the Netherlands at one point, we learned about, in Groningen, there's this part of $100 million, that has been designated them for about 30 years. And it's for the economic development as a response to, the issue that they had there regards to the earthquakes. And I thought, well, what about a similar sum of funding, and not sum, a similar sort of funding for the island? Is this something that the Executive Council is also having a discussion about? Because I think, when we met with the State Secretary, we also mentioned him. We see, for instance, the PSO as economic development, not only about cost of living. It has hands in both areas. But if we had a sum of money that annually we knew was guaranteed, that we could focus on our economic development, that would be beneficial to the island. So I'm just wondering if individually as an island, public entity, SABA, the Executive Council having those discussions, but maybe it's something that all 3 islands together can lobby the Netherlands for. We're an outlying region that is very much in need of money for economic development, and I think it's important that we're accounted for without having to constantly be putting our hands out and on our knees begging for monies to improve our own lot here on the island. You mentioned that during the course of this year or the next few weeks, we should see a vacancy for a mobility and connectivity advisor. Maybe it's a different name, but I just use that term. Maybe you can elucidate what exactly the responsibility of this person would be and what can we expect? Because, you know, I do support more attention being given to connectivity and mobility, but I also just wonder, you know, what can we expect? Because I know, I think personally that I've mentioned, I think more needs to be done in terms of connectivity, especially establishing our own position on what that means. And I agree that mobility needs to be given more attention, given, you know, the recent increase in traffic on the island and what we should be done to mitigate that.
We also have a follow-up question by Island Council Lady Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a clarification question for Commissioner Zegers about the day trips offered by Winnair. Does this still happen? And because you mentioned of it continuing, but I just want to clarify that it is still happening and that it is successful. And just a suggestion, also in discussions with Winnair, maybe it would also be good to, in support of tourism, but also families visiting the island, that during the week of Carnival, if some extra flights could maybe be put in. I know this necessarily isn't the job of, or the responsibility of government, but it would be good if the government can facilitate those discussions. I have a friend visiting from the US during that week, and she booked almost 3 months ago, and the flight was already almost full. So you can imagine persons trying to book around this time. It will be even harder. So it would be good if those discussions can happen, that at least for that week, extra flights can be added to their schedules. And that was it for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for the follow-up questions. I like the example that you gave about the funds that are available in the Netherlands for, whether it's earthquakes or economic development. And, you know, that comes down to a principle that was not established by us, but established by them, and that's comply and explain. Because if it's possible in the Netherlands, then it should also be possible for us. And, you know, you mentioned about connectivity in your follow-up question, and, you know, that was a discussion that we had here with the State Secretary, you know, about the PSO, if the PSO should just be for local residents or should also be for tourists. And, you know, the almost immediate reaction was that it shouldn't be for tourists. And, you know, I gave the example of, you know, what happens in the Netherlands. And it's one that you introduced me to, Councilmember Charles, and it's one that I use now quite often. Because the ferries that operate from the mainland to the islands is not subsidized. That's a reality. You know, the ferry companies don't get any money from the government. But those waterways are maintained daily. And the maintenance of those waterways are being maintained by the state. It's paid for by the state, by the national government. And when I mentioned this to the State Secretary, I said, you know, a portion of the waterways is not being done for the residents, and then the part for the tourists isn't being done, it's being done for everyone. And those islands depend on tourism for their economies. And right away you could see that he was like, yeah, you have a point. So, you know, we should not be seen as a different entity. You know, we are as Dutch as Ameland is Dutch. And, you know, we should be treated, the same way. So comply or explain is a very important point, though. And, you know, I'll use another example. We have this, I believe it's called the AEF study about infrastructure. And you mentioned about, you know, the islands should come together to see how we can get funding for economic development. But here we have a study that shows that all 3 islands lack money for infrastructure. And, you know, to date, you know, that's something that has not been taken into any government agreement as to how that gap will be filled. So, you know, these discussions and ideas are always good to have, but at the end of the day, you know, we needed the decision makers in The Hague to actually have the political will to make it happen. And, you know, oftentimes that's lacking. And you said it well, that, you know, we shouldn't always feel that we have to go on our hands and knees to beg for money, because it often does feel that that's what we're doing, just for the bare necessities. And, you know, saying that we're a part of a successful country is one thing, but proving it to the people here on these islands is something different. And albeit a lot does go very well, there's still areas where big improvements can be made. And we've seen over time that those improvements take longer than what they should. And those improvements are always tied to either the lack of a willingness to adjust the law, or to change the law, or to make a new law, or a willingness to admit, well, maybe, yeah, the islands are right and we're wrong. That's also a very big one. And for sure, it's always tied to money. And, you know, always say, well, we don't have money for this. Whereas the money needed to correct many of these things is, yeah, basically a drop in the bucket. But that's the reality that we have, and we do hope that eventually there is political will to make the change that, you know, the islands have been calling for, not just recently, but, yeah, in many areas since the transition period. About the responsibilities for the position of the connectivity and mobility vacancy, I want to also make it known that this position is being funded from the money that was made available for the PSO. So that was in the Beskikking from BZK that they wanted to see a dedicated person on SEBA and one in Statia that is fully focused on connectivity. We've been able to push mobility into that as well. But connectivity here is in a very wide sense. So not just, you know, connectivity with Makana or with Winner, but also looking at, you know, how do we get our cargo, shipping lanes, shipping routes. So, you know, looking at how we can have a better view on how things work and, you know, where improvements or other opportunities, you know, could exist that we're not exploring. So in a nutshell, that's a lot of the focus of this position. And also with regards to the day trip tariffs, those do exist. Of course, there are not many of them. There's only a few seats per flight, and on certain days, so it's not even offered every day, but there are opportunities. But unfortunately, it's only one way. It's from St. Martin to Saba, and not offered for Saba people that want to go to St. Martin. Quite strange, but that's what Winner has as an available option. And during the meeting that we had with the CEO a few weeks ago, we did discuss the possibility of putting in extra flights during the carnival period. He was open to it, but yeah, we have to see how the demand is and whether indeed that does happen. But for sure, we will follow up onto that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. That concludes the second round of the questions by Island Council Member Charles and the others that added in. Now we continue with the final set of questions by Island Council Lady Miss Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, since it's our practice to send the questions in advance, you all may have noticed that at this point, I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record, asking the same things over and over. But I just wanted to get some updates on the following. We had a couple of discussions when it came to the incoming correspondence to the Executive Council and how long is the response time for the Executive Council to get back to the persons that sending in the correspondence. We had conversations about having a document manager. We had presentations on it, and then nothing happened there. And I'm just wondering if, in the meantime, there have been any improvements, because you do have conversations with people that say, yeah, you know, we sent in an email or we sent in a letter, and it takes very long to get a response. And maybe, of course, there is a set time, and it would be good to use this forum to let people know. When it comes to publishing plans or projects, we had this conversation as well. Sometimes before, initially, it came up when we had the strike in the park. And just recently, I think last week, I was having a conversation with somebody about the new harbor, and they were talking about how, you know, it seems like a good plan. And then I asked, just because sometimes, you know, you have to be the devil's advocate. So have you seen the plans? Because I've seen a couple of plans. But if you go on the website, there's hardly any plans. And I remember, I think it was a meeting in, I think, October 2024. We spoke about getting a new website, and then all of these things would be published, and we would have these things downstairs as well. And I don't really think those things have happened since. Also, recently I noticed in the email that we received about the legislative agenda, I noticed the single-use plastic ban there. But I already had it on my list because we did have a couple of presentations. We were supposed to change the ordinance. I'm just wondering what the status is there and if there has still been communication with businesses where that is concerned. I think early last year, we had a conversation about the shipping prices. There was supposed to be some type of we were supposed to do I think a study, a research on these things, and I know it was a broader thing, but I do remember the executive council saying that they would get back to us and provide an update on it. And so just wondering, since then, February 2025, if there has been any follow-up actions taken. Also, if the executive council could provide an update on the execution plan for the governing program, because I think it is a nice thing to have, but it also would be good to know how far we're going with it. Yeah, so how is that being executed? And it's fine if we have to have a information market, but I do think there should be a point where we have a conversation or some kind of communication to the public on it, because of course it affects them. And then the decree for price transparency was supposed to be implemented, I think, 1st of March. I have not heard anything since then. Just wondering, how is that going? If it has been implemented, if not, then why not? Is it an issue with enforcement, or maybe shop owners still getting the things together, but it would be nice to get an update on that. And lastly, of course, September last year, we had, we all know, we don't have to go back into that, but we did have an Island Council meeting since then, and it was a discussion about enhanced security and technology at our ports of entry. And the chairman alluded to having certain conversations, and I'm just wondering if anything has been done since then, if there are any plans. Because I think it is still something that is very present on people's minds. And every now and then something strange happens and then it comes back up, and it would be nice. Of course, I know it is partly a justice issue, but like I said, in that meeting in September, it's also a local government issue, and I think we need to address it, but maybe something is already in the pipelines. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady. Matthew, we now begin with answering, the first one that you asked about, the timeline regarding the response time for incoming correspondences. I would like to clarify that. Under normal circumstances, that is a period of 6 weeks. We try to maintain that. And when it's not possible to meet this time frame, we do try as much as possible to inform the person who wrote the letter or the correspondence to us that we may need more time. Like you alluded to, there are times where, the follow-up is not as, it could be always better. So this is something that we have our eye on to improve. So that is regarding the timeline for the response time for incoming correspondences. I now give the floor to Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will do my best to answer what I can today, as thorough as I can. There was the first question about the publishing of plans or projects. I do believe over the past period, we have seen quite an improvement of publications coming out from the public entity. And, those include plans, but then also updates on certain projects. At least, I see the updates on WhatsApp. If this isn't sufficient, and I can imagine that at times it does get lost, or, not everybody sees that, I can discuss in my next portfolio meeting that, to make let's try to have a bigger effort in ensuring that the information reaches everyone, because maybe not everyone is seeing it on WhatsApp. We also know that not everybody is reading press releases. So, I will commit to saying that, we should make a stronger effort to ensure that the information is reaching where it needs to reach, because, these projects do have an impact on the people that live here, so it's important that they know about it and, exactly how it's being done. So that's something that I will work on together with the team. As for the single-use plastic ban, indeed, it is still being implemented. One of the updates that I got is that recently a business was fined for not adhering to it, for selling things that should not be sold. So that's good to hear. And I know that how there's still discussions about the exemption that's in place right now for plastic cups, to see if there's an alternative. But as a discussion, that's still ongoing, and I would assume that the Island Council would be updated as soon as there's, something that would change with that exemption. You mentioned about the shipping price increases and a connectivity plan. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but maybe that's just a misunderstanding. There was a quick scan done last year that also focused on shipping rates. And that was a plan that was completed and also shared with the council. And to add to that, because I do believe giving a plan and not necessarily having an explanation about a plan, there's a big difference there. We are in discussions with the company that made the plan to actually come to the island. I believe the availability is in June, to give multiple presentations, of course, to the council, and then one to the business community, and then one to the wider public about, the conclusions of these studies. That company was also involved with economic impact, the socio-economic plan. And then also because, it's an economist, can speak in depth about, what can and cannot be done to, try to discourage unprofessional competition. Just to give an idea to the listening public about what's possible, what's not possible, how it impacts on the global stage, impact prices onto our islands. So that, I believe, is something that would be useful to, whoever's willing to come in to hear those types of explanations, because we can sit in this room and talk about it, but it's another thing when you have an actual economist that's coming in to give more of an insightful discussion about topics that, impact all of us. With regards to the price transparency, indeed, it did go in effect on March 1st. We have seen that two of the smaller supermarkets aren't where we want them to be yet, but we also do see that the effort is there. They have the equipment, and it's just a matter of having it fully rolled out. And that is something that does have our attention and is being monitored, but it did go in effect as of the 1st of March. And then there was also a question about the harbor safety. I'm not sure if the governor wants to add anything to that. But a discussion that I've continuously had is that, with the persons that are working at our border, the focus obviously seems to be on, tax collection and tax compliance, and not necessarily on port safety. And I saw this firsthand when I returned to Seba-Uwene a month or two ago. You had a lady coming in with a bag with 2 gifts for her grandchildren from Canada. And, right away, she was being harassed by the customs officer about what was in the bag and do you have receipts? And the bag was actually held at the airport. Whereas, not one other person was asked, if they had anything to declare or whatever have you. And that just doesn't happen at the airport, it also happens at the harbor. So that's a point that I've stressed, across every platform that I've been able to address it to, that the approach from border control needs to shift from, tax collections and tax compliance to actual border control. Because, right now our borders aren't necessarily safe. And, we can put up a gate, the government can put up a gate, that's just a matter of installing a gate. But is that stopping, anyone from bringing weapons or drugs to the island? It's definitely not. It starts with those that's there, who are assigned to carry out that role that's currently not doing it well enough. And I must applaud the governor and, of course, his colleagues from Statia and Bonaire, who sent a joint letter addressing that, saying that, there were deep concerns about what's happening at the border and that, there isn't sufficient attention to what's going on. So that is part of a bigger discussion. A gate doesn't necessarily solve it. That's just a reality. It starts with customs officers, being a bit more thorough in their processes, following leads, and making a bigger effort towards actual controls and safety, and not necessarily always with compliance with tax collection. So I hope I've been able to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. To add what you just said, on the letter that you're referring to was sent on February the 9th of this year. And as a result of the letter which the three governors sent to the Netherlands, questions were posed in the second chamber. So this is something that also has the attention of the second chamber members, but nonetheless affects us locally here on the three islands. So it's something that you also, I would encourage you all as council members to keep, in touch with the second chamber members so that they are also asking the questions to the government, because this is not only the Ministry of Justice, it's also the Ministry of Finance, because the customs fall under the Ministry of Finance and the border control falls under the Ministry of Defense. But nevertheless, it is something that has their attention, that we need to keep the pressure on from all three councils of all three islands and the governors as well. So that has our continued attention. That concludes the first round of the questions by Island Council Lady Matthew and the answers provided. I will now give her the opportunity if she has follow-up, and then other council members to follow up also.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to go back to the publishing plans, and also thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for answering. And I won't disagree with you that there is a lot being published now. That's definitely true. But I do still miss those specific plans. And maybe the website is not the place for these plans. Maybe they are, I don't know. But, just to have in a concrete picture of what's going on. So for example, we had the presentation on the language policy earlier, and I think that in itself just being a presentation, so if anybody's watching or if they want to look at it later, it's all there. And so I think those things, and of course it's going to be or should be on our website, so it could also be downloaded for people to look at. And I think those are the specific things that what I'm referring to, because I do agree that a lot is going out. Maybe everybody is not on the same channels. I definitely need to follow the actual WhatsApp channel, but that's me. But yeah, those documents sometimes are lacking. And I just want to go to the, just to clarify the question with the shipping price increase, it had a connectivity thing on it, but disregard that. It was just basically from the quick scan, we had a conversation, what would be next? So now it's good to know that these are the next steps, that the people will be coming to the island and they would provide the information, because I think that's important. One thing I missed from you, though, is the update on the execution plan for the governing program. And like I say, it doesn't have to be we don't have to have a presentation on it now, but it would be good to at some point have a conversation about it, but also have it communicated to the public. And just to go back to the safety at the ports, you know, we had the conversation about, you know, having the conversations with Ministry of Finance and Justice and how the border control actually operates. But again, I think there is our responsibility, and I specifically didn't mention the gate for a reason, because I'm not talking about that. Because the last conversation that we had in this room, the chairman alluded to having conversations with security from the local government, different technology from the local government, and that's actually what I wanted to update on, if anything has been discussed since then. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Matthew. I think, was there any others? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions, but I just wanted to give a remark on the point that Ms. Matthew mentioned about the borders. I just wanted to mention that a week or two ago, we also had the crime statistics by KPCN, where they also stressed the importance of border control and support at the border. And in their statistics, they also had several reports of people making complaints about deadly weapons circulating in the community. And I think that's also a strong indication that we all need to be more involved, and it's a community effort, because also when these things, well, they expect people to come forward when these things happen, and seeing especially what happened last September, whether that could have been avoided or not, we'll never know. But we need to ensure that that never happens again. And for that to happen, I think it involves all of us, border control, all of the other groups, KPCN, government, the staff at the harbor, but also the community. We're a very small community here. There's people from all walks of life in our community now as well, who we may not necessarily know the way we know each other. And it's important that when we see things, that we also speak up. And again, it's a small community. We should all work together for the safety of our island. And I just wanted to make that remark. Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Peterson. Island Council Member Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I just want to follow up because one of you had mentioned something about the justice chain. And I just, what surprises me is just how bureaucratic everything has become. You know, I was telling somebody a couple of weeks ago that, you know, years ago, before 10, the police were customs, immigration, and police. And, you know, they did intelligence and all those different things for when whatever was happening. Now you see, for instance, you know, who deals with the border? Sorry, not border. Who deals with the import of goods and all those things is customs. Who deals with people? Immigration. And the police only control, they can't deal with things at the border. So people are exploiting this loophole created by the system, and rather than the system saying, well, let's get more, you know, come together to address this, they keep doubling down. You know, customs keeps saying, well, you know, that's not our job. Immigration keeps saying that's not. So at one point, it's nobody's job, but the problem still remains. And I think it's about people getting down and saying, look, yeah, not everybody's from the island, but here we are on this island together, and it requires that everybody work together. You know, it can't be that the immigration is saying, oh, that's somebody else's job, or the customs saying that's somebody else's job. I remember one time the customs saying, yeah, they're scared because they're armed. I watch every customs officer here armed, but yet still not doing their job. So I think what we really need is people to step up and just take initiative. I've been searched more going into, or stopped by customs more going to Schiphol than I've been stopped by the customs on Sable. You know? And, you know, like the last time we got there, first thing, as soon as we got off the plane, that's how I found out I messed with my passport. First thing they ask you for is your passport. Customs. No, I had, long story. But yeah, I had my passport, but I just had misplaced it in the moment. But it took a while to get it, you know? But that goes to show you, you know, they are doing due diligence to protect their borders. in the European Netherlands, and here we are, small island, you're surrounded only by water, and the same people that have the same responsibility don't do the same thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Island Councilmember Mr. Charles. Commissioner Zegas, there was a question by Island Council Lady Matthew for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give maybe before I give an update about the governing program, I also want to go back very quickly to the concerns about the border safety. And there are discussions about, you know, the Fort Bay in particular, about what can be done with maybe, you know, some sort of ISPS type regulations to see what's possible with the infrastructure that's there. And but those discussions are in an early phase, and we have to see exactly what comes out of it. But of course, you know, it is truly hard to control 100% what's coming in, especially things like cargo and stuff like that, unless you have, you know, real commercial scanners. I don't even think that St. Martin or any of the islands in our region has something like that. But you know, that's something that, you know, does have our attention. And with a new harbor, we're already, you know, assessing how, like, the ISPS code can be implemented, especially like in the areas where the ferry would be docked to ensure people coming in and out, the proper checks and balances are in place. So we're looking to see what's possible within the current facilities, but then also we are planning for what needs to be in place when the new harbor becomes operational. And, you know, things like gates and stuff like that, you know, yeah, probably necessary, probably helpful, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle. And but probably out of necessity, just from an image perspective, is probably necessary. With regards to the governing program, indeed, that was a question that I missed. You know, we can have an informal meeting about it, information market, or the idea was that, you know, we would have requested to have it on the agenda in a meeting on May to give more of like a public type of update, but that was the intention.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegas. This concludes agenda point number 4, oral question time. We continue now with agenda point number 5, incoming and outcoming correspondence and announcements from November the 1st until April the 10th. Okay, so in the also on the website, people can view all the incoming correspondences. So those are, I looked around, those are approved. We now proceed to agenda point number 5.1, Island Council incoming and outgoing correspondence list. That was 5.1. No. 5.2, Executive Council decision list. None. Okay. 5.3, written questions to the Island Council. Written questions to the Executive Council in accordance with Article 35. No. 5.4, answers to written questions to the Executive Council in accordance with Article 35. There we have from Island Council Lady Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some follow-up questions to the written questions that I sent in on payroll errors. 2, actually. In one of the answers, it states that payroll errors are addressed when they are brought to your attention, and that overpayments were not flagged by staff. Can you clarify who is responsible for identifying payroll errors, and are you implying that it is the responsibility of the affected employee? The second one is, your answer states that staff are informed as soon as possible when errors are identified. What is the standard notification time frame in days for informing an employee once an error is identified? For example, I recently learned this year that in June 2024, a correction was applied to my salary without any communication. So I would appreciate clarity on how this aligns with the stated practice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Matthew. Your first question, you asked if who's responsible for identifying the payroll errors. It is not the responsibility of the affected employee, but the responsibility of the payroll processing to do that. So that rests with us at HRM. But in some instances, errors have occurred without being identified at the time of the processing. You know, in cases of overpayment, these are not always reported by the staff member, which could result in delays in identifying and addressing the issue. But to conclude, it is the responsibility of HRM. The second question you had about a time frame. There is no fixed time frame, but we will notify the staff as soon as we become aware of these errors. With yours is a specific example about yourself. These are issues which we are looking into and that have to be addressed. But for yours specifically, it would also be good that you review that also with HRM. But for all staff, we do recommend them as much as possible to review the information provided. You know, we do acknowledge that people, you know, they want to make sure the money's on the account, but it's good also to review the salary slip. So this is something that a good suggestion would be to break it down to the different departments within government that people know how to read a salary slip. So this is something also that in HRM that we can pull across all the various departments, that we can educate the different, employees of us how to read a salary slip, because it could be a reality that everyone doesn't understand all the information provided for in their salary slip. They're just looking at, what they're getting at the end of the month. So this is something good that we could learn from and do. So those are the answers to your questions, hopefully. We now move on to agenda point number 6, motions. There were no motions, right? No. And then we move on to agenda point number 7, the closing. Before closing, I thank everyone for the presence here today. As we stated before, this is something new what we're doing. And I thank everyone for your patience and